The family of a man who died after being chased by police have appealed for calm ahead of a protest over the circumstances surrounding his death. Reshan Charles died in Hackney in the early hours of Saturday morning. Police said he was seen trying to swallow an object before being taken ill. Simon Harris has the latest.
It should have been a straightforward arrest. A suspect is chased into a shop by a police officer and detained. But instead, this CCTV footage has become disturbing evidence in yet another investigation into a death in police custody. The video shows Reshan Charles being restrained on the floor of a grocery store at Dalston in East London. The police have disclosed few details of what happened in the shop, other than to say Mr. Charles was seen trying to swallow an object and a police officer tried to stop him harming himself. And footage from another camera appears to show the 20-year-old putting something in his mouth. What isn't in doubt is the tragic outcome. Mr. Charles was taken by ambulance to hospital where he died. Today, outside the shop, there was anger and disbelief among people who knew him. People like Pauline Pierce, once known as the Hackney heroine, for standing up to rioters in 2011.
This man could still have been alive today. Right. They have machinery. They have machinery that if you swallow something, you can be scanned. They know you've swallowed it. They've got special loos where they can retrieve it. There was no reason. They're saying they tried to get these packages to keep them safe. Well, I'm sorry. I'd rather him have not been kept safe if that's the case.
He wasn't a perfect child. And my thing is that if he was actually did something, and he had something on him, I think that they dealt with him in the wrong way. There is force and excessive force, and to me, they use excessive force.
Erkin Gooni is the trustee of a nearby mosque and a friend of Mr. Charles' family. He says the young man's death has put a further strain on community relations.
You've got to understand that we and the kids on the streets see this. We don't have any trust. Police at this present stage have no trust in the community.
But Mr. Charles' family is said to have distanced themselves from tonight's protest, and the local MP has appealed for calm.
It's a tragedy and my heart goes out to the victim and his family, but we've got to keep calm while we find out what's actually happened, and that's why the Independent Police Complaints Commission is investigating now. It's in their hands. We need to let that investigation happen. I hope it moves quite quickly.
The IPCC has issued a statement saying it has evidence which indicates an object was removed from Mr. Charles' throat in the shop. Simon Harris, ITV News, Dalston.
Charlie Gard's mother found herself back in court today, but this legal fight is over her son's death rather than his life. Charlie's parents want to be able to take their son home to die after saying they had run out of time to get him treatment abroad. Simon Harris joins me now. Take us through what's happening in court today.
Well, as you say, Nina, another day in court for Charlie Gard's mum and for Great Ormond Street Hospital, and another day when this terribly sad rift between the two sides was laid bare. Connie Yates arrived at court less than 24 hours after she and her partner Chris Gard conceded nothing more could be done for their son. But they do have this one final request, that he be allowed to go home to die. Charlie, however, is on a life support system, and doctors at Great Ormond Street say there are practical problems moving him to the family home at Bedfont in West London, not least that the ventilator which allows him to breathe won't fit through the front door. Great Ormond Street has suggested moving him to a hospice to spare him pain and to give him dignity. But the family's barrister, Grant Armstrong, told the court the parents had hoped that Great Ormond Street would work with them. We struggle with the difficulties which the hospital is placing in the way. The hospital's barrister told the court it wanted to fulfil the parents' last desire, but it was essential to avoid mishaps and hazards to ensure Charlie's safety. A short time ago, after a couple of hours in court this afternoon, the case was adjourned until tomorrow, when we expect the judge to make a decision on whether Charlie will be allowed to go home to die.
Simon, thank you. It is supposed to be the government's grand plan to clean up our polluted air that is blamed for the deaths of thousands of Londoners every year. The headline pledge in its Clean Air strategy is to scrap petrol and diesel cars by 2040, and it has set aside £3 billion to help. But today, the Mayor called the plan half-hearted and hollow and said it should have included a scrappage incentive scheme for diesel vehicles. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has more.
George Giorgio doesn't need a government announcement to tell him diesel is doomed. On the forecourt of his car dealership at Tulse Hill in South London, the diesels aren't moving. Customers have wised up to the future.
It's not good for me, no. We used to sell a lot of diesels, but not anymore. People are thinking twice to buy them.
What's the future for dealers like you?
Well, I'm sure there'll be something. We move on to something else. It's not the end of us.
London's toxic air is blamed for 9,000 premature deaths a year. With a court deadline looming, ministers had just days to come up with a plan to tackle the pollution. The centrepiece is a ban on the sale of all new diesel and petrol-powered cars from 2040. But crucially, London's mayor has failed to secure a nationwide diesel scrappage scheme. City Hall estimates a diesel scrappage scheme just for London would cost more than £500 million. And the government seems less than enthusiastic about bankrolling the mayor's big idea. The new Environment Secretary, Michael Gove, dismissed previous schemes as poor value for money. But the mayor needs government cash to encourage diesel owners to switch to hybrid or electric vehicles ahead of his proposed ultra-low emission zone in 2019.
The impacts of air quality, the bad air quality that we're facing, in the billions of pounds. So a diesel scrappage fund is a very cost-effective way, if targeted, and the mayor's proposal was a very targeted approach.
But even some Green campaigners think the scrappage scheme is the wrong answer, and the money would be better spent on promoting other forms of transport, not battery or electric cars.
Well, I think it just locks us into car dependence, and it potentially leaves us with all the existing problems that we have at the moment around congestion. And the other thing is that even electric vehicles produce PM2.5 particle pollution, which is very damaging to our health, that comes from the tyre wear as they're driving along our roads.
The mayor isn't giving up. City Hall said the government's offer to consult on a scrappage scheme means the argument can still be won. Simon Harris, ITV News, Central London.
A High Court judge today approved a plan to move baby Charlie Gard to a hospice and withdraw his life support treatment. We don't yet know when that will happen, though. Well, Simon Harris is here. Simon, what does the judge's ruling mean, then?
Charlene, interestingly, so much of this tragic story has been played out in the public arena. But tonight, as it seems we're approaching the end of Charlie's life, there's effectively a news blackout on what is happening. We haven't seen or heard anything from Charlie's parents since yesterday's final court case, when the judge set a deadline of midday today for them to reach an agreement with Great Ormond Street about which hospice Charlie would be taken to. It now appears that an agreement hasn't been reached, so Charlie's fate will be decided by a sequence of events approved by the judge. Charlie will continue to be treated at Great Ormond Street for a period of time. We don't know how long. He'll then be moved to the hospice. The court won't allow us to say where that is. And then after another period of time, again, we're not being told how long, Charlie's life support will be ended, his ventilator will be withdrawn, and it's expected he'll die shortly afterwards. Tonight, Great Ormond Street has issued a statement offering its deepest sympathies to Chris Gard and Connie Yates, and saying everyone at the hospital wishes there could have been a less tragic outcome to this case.
OK, Simon, thanks very much.